Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live on the free Odyssey app. Our mic's a mess. There we go. Now we can hear. All right. Loud and clear in your earballs. Now, of course, I'm way too loud in my ears. What a rousing start to a Monday edition of the show. Anthony, how are you doing over there? How's your weekend?
My weekend was cut short, Craig.
What happened?
We just happened to have 2 days this weekend as opposed to 3.
What? I mean, that's what a normal weekend is. I know it's Anthony, we've just been lucky with the way the holidays fell.
That's what I'm saying.
They didn't actually change the rules.
Oh, so it wasn't really cut short.
No, it wasn't cut short. This is reality.
It was a short weekend. Yeah.
We're back, bro.
Yeah. I'm having a hard time, facing that reality.
Yeah.
That's
so
all.
The good news is in like a couple weeks, we got another one.
Okay.
Because
looking forward to it.
Next weekend, full week of shows.
Mm-hmm.
Although Friday will be a little bit different. Because Friday, we got to be in. Well, actually, you might just have to skedaddle on up there after. I don't know how that's working. I'm doing the show from somewhere in Bethesda. So
Next
at least
Friday?
I don't have. Next Friday.
Yeah.
Because we got our event at the Bethesda Theater,
Mm-hmm.
1067 The Fan versus the Team 980 Live. And so in order for your boy to be on time for that, I'm just going to do the show somewhere in Bethesda. So I don't know whether I'm going to go to Sheehan's studio, whether we're just going to set me up with the Comrex. I want to do a show for an empty theater. I want to be on stage at the Bethesda Theater doing a show to an empty crowd. I think that would be hilarious.
Wow.
We can make it a sound check. We can do whatever we need.
Okay.
We'll talk to CK about that.
Yeah.
I'm probably more realistically just going to go to Sheehan's studio and be like, Kevin, let me in. Or whoever it is that does that. And then the following week will be different because that's Super Bowl week, and I'll be in Vegas starting. So I'm off on Tuesday because I got to fly there, and it's far away, and flight times aren't kind to radio shows.
Mm-hmm.
And then the week after is a normal week. But the week after that's President's Day.
Yes, sir.
So we're getting there. And the week after that's the NFL Combine. And so your boy's heading out there again. Been in Indianapolis for a couple days.
Mm.
So got a lot of stuff happening.
Yeah, we do.
I don't know when you're going to, outside of President's Day, a lot of that stuff was on my end of the equation. Sorry about that. Really, I just feel like a giant jerk. I just rubbed it in.
I won't have any. I'll have 4 weeks until the end of February. I'll be going to Zaire's bachelor's party.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's it.
Okay. Well, that'll be fun. You get that to look forward to.
Mm-hmm.
It's only a month away.
That's a long month.
It is, but it's a good month. Commanders are going to hire a head coach. There'll be the Super Bowl, Combine, 1 4-day week. Won't be so bad.
I like the sound of that. Thanks.
We're going with some optimism.
Yes.
You know what else we're going with on a Monday?
What?
1st and 10. Yeah, bring that back.
It's time to get the breakdown started. 1, 2, 3. First up, 10 observations. It's 1st and 10.
We do this every week during the regular season. 10 observations from the Commanders game, but for the playoffs, Suns Commanders, which unfortunately has been the norm, at least since we've been doing the show the last couple of years. We take observations from the games of the weekend. So we'll do probably 5 apiece from the championship games this coming weekend. We'll do 10 from the Super Bowl. But we got all over the place number for the divisional weekend. Also, Anthony, I'm not logged in on this computer yet. It was a Monday. Nothing was logged in, which is fine. It's not anybody's fault. They just probably reset the stuff over the weekend. I mean, half the Rooster stuff's still in here, if I'm being honest. His like suitcase backpack is in here. So we had a nice little changeover. So long story short, Anthony, do you have the numbers, please?
Yes, sir.
And?
Number 1.
This isn't the most important thing in the short term, but it might wind up being the most important thing in the long term. I hope everyone realizes how good Patty Mahomes is at football. And if you are in some kind of denial that he is already one of the greatest of all time, the fact is, if he retired at the end of this season, no matter what happened, Patrick Mahomes has had a Hall of Fame career already. But he's only 28. And he is now going to his 6th straight AFC title game to begin his career as a starter. He has 6 for 6. That is like the silly LeBron stat when he went to 8 straight Eastern Conference finals, except for he was a decade in, or not a decade in. He was about 8 years into his career already. Patrick Mahomes just started there, and like he is supposed to be entering his prime now, somewhere between 27 and 31 as an NFL quarterback, right? Like he's in his prime, and he had stacked insane results before he got there, and it's seemingly just getting better. His consistency is off the charts. He is 6 for 6 to start his career. If he wins the Super Bowl this year, 2 more wins, I believe I read the other day that he would be 3rd all time in career playoff wins. Not before the age of 30, period. Like ahead of Peyton Manning, ahead of Drew Brees, he's already ahead of Aaron Rodgers. Like he'd be ahead of all of them. The only 2 guys that have it once Mahomes wins 2 more playoff games, and I say once because it feels inevitable, will be Brady and Montana. And he's 28 years old. I don't know that they're going to win this weekend against Baltimore. I think they'll obviously be underdogs. This was amazingly the first time ever that he's had to play on the road. He answered that challenge, made big throws, made big plays with his legs. He always does. Playoff Pat, like it's a thing. He just runs more in key situations and makes plays. He and Kelsey were magnificent. Rashee Rice is emerging. Like there's so many good things happening for the Chiefs that we'll obviously continue to talk about because, well, they're still alive. But just I hope people appreciate how freaking good Patrick Mahomes is, because by the eye test and day by day by the numbers, like this is probably the guy that's played quarterback better than anyone else that we've ever seen play. Both in the height of what he can do on any given play and, of course, the consistency with which he does it. Okay. Bigger picture thought.
Number 2.
Well, at least in the immediacy of football, hard to be bigger picture than, hey, we could be watching the greatest quarterback of all time. But you have to run the ball to be serious in this league. And it's kind of a truth that I think we've known intellectually forever, because teams that win run the football. And there is some confirmation bias there where, like, yeah, if you are up at the end of games, you run the football, and so the good teams inevitably do. But how do they actually get the leads? Well, they pass it. And we know that you pass to score in the league as well. It's like, Craig, aren't those two things contradictory? And the answer is no. And I think that this year with the Commanders put this into perspective for me in a really tremendous way. But seeing how these teams, these Final Four, build their offenses is like, it's just undeniable that there is a balance somewhere that is optimal. And that balance comes from pursuing running the football, because it just gives you a schematic advantage with the looks that defenses give you, because they're terrified to give up the run. Because the alternative is they give up the run. And there's nothing more demoralizing in the sport, and the emotional toll it takes is just have the ball run down your throat. So eventually you do bring that extra safety down in the box. You do go to heavier personnel. And you see these really smart offensive coordinators, from Andy Reid to Todd Monken to Ben Johnson to Kyle Shanahan, the 4 main offensive drivers left, then use the play action game, use misdirection, and create matchups with excellent players. And if you wanted to put a 2B to this, you have to have a good tight end to really excel and have great offense in this league. And all 4 of those teams have, these teams either feature a run game as the key part of their offense, Detroit, San Francisco, Baltimore, or know when it's time to go there. And in Kansas City, even with Patrick Mahomes, the guy that I talked about first, that I thought was more important than like, hey, what's the tie that binds together the Final 4 teams in the playoffs? Even with that guy at quarterback, Andy Reid is like, we got to run the football some. We got to have Isaiah Pacheco be a big part of what we do at this time of year. And that play action game then opens up, and the adjustments the Bills have to make open up Travis Kelce, the guy that everyone knows they want to go to, for 2 touchdowns in the biggest game of the year so far. It's just, it's so obvious, it's so critical, which, again, to go back to the Commanders season, makes it so painful that they just refuse to do it, especially considering the young quarterback that they should have been protecting. so much better. All right, number 3.
Number 3.
I hate to do this because he's a Terp. I don't know that the Bills need to make major changes, but I do think it's time for the Stephon Diggs era to end in Buffalo. And there's other changes they probably need to make, but and honestly, I don't know how much change they need to on some kind of massive scale. Like, this is a team that was the best team in the league in the back half of the season. And we'll talk to Mike Schop about this a little bit later, our buddy from up in Buffalo at WGR. But it's like, if you're the best team in the league down the stretch and you've dug yourself this hole that you're digging out of, the chances that you're going to finish the season winning 10 straight games is just slim to none, especially when the last 4 of them would come against some of the best teams in the league. And so, like, if the Bills were allowed to keep playing the next 2 weeks and they won, they'd finish the season 9-1, but that's not good enough because the one happened at the wrong time. And that's the nature of single elimination tournaments, which is essentially what the NFL playoffs are. But specific to kind of where I think it's time for them to figure something else out, like Stephon Diggs and kind of the vibes around that have been off all year. It was awkward from training camp on. He had a down year production wise. He was awesome to start the year and then just downhill from there. And if you cut him, you can actually save money, which is now really important because Josh Allen's number starts to balloon. You have a big dead cap money next year, but I think that dead cap is actually a little less than if you were to keep him. So I know that sounds counterintuitive, but like you can either pay Stephon Diggs or pay the cap $22 million to keep Stephon Diggs, or you can pay the cap $19 to cut him. So it's $19 in dead cap because you don't get the production, but it's actually cheaper than if he was on your roster. So there's financial implications there, but I don't really think this is about the math. I think it's about trying to turn the page into the next phase of whatever the Buffalo Bills are going to be. And the Bills now enter, ironically, the same stage that the Chiefs are in and a similar stage that the Patriots went in the middle of Brady's career, which is we now have the dude at quarterback. And obviously, maybe not obviously, I think Allen and Mahomes can go toe-to-toe. I think Allen is 92% of what Mahomes is. The consistency's not as good, but the high-end stuff is there, and he's still pretty consistent. So can you get a better version of Allen and time it well in the playoffs? But also, how do you, knowing that you have the guy, that you can't upgrade that position reasonably, how do you reform your roster around him once the first group that you brought in to surround him as a young player on a cheaper contract ages and prices out? And this is the challenge, and I think part of that is going to be finding newer, younger, quicker, faster playmakers that maybe play to his strengths a little bit more. This isn't a shot at Diggs by any means, and in fact, Diggs has been a guy that's been great at this for years, but you have to wonder on the north side of 30 if he can continue to do it, is like getting some quicker playmakers, where last night Allen was so good and efficient right at or behind the line of scrimmage. Just let him be a distributor, knowing that he can do that at an elite level. Can you find guys like Rashee Rice has been found in Kansas City to move them into the next generation? Or do you go what the Patriots did back in the day with the 2 tight ends, like now with Knox and Kincaid? Like there's options there, but they got to figure out what direction they want to go. All right, let's move a little bit faster through these final 6 observations here to start the Hoffman Show on this Monday after the divisional round.
Number 4.
The cruelty of that game ending wide right is just too much for me. It's just if the Bills had lost in any other heartbreaking fashion, I feel terrible for them, but it wouldn't feel cruel. This feels cruel. Bills, wide right? Are you serious? The second that thing started hooking, I out loud went, oh no. And then proceeded to explain to my wife why that was the cruelest thing, which she thought was just awful. And now we have to watch the 4 Falls of Buffalo 30 for 30. But yeah, yikes. God, that sucks. Meanwhile, on the other end of the spectrum, west on I-90.
Number 5.
The Lions culture thing is real. We'll dive into this maybe later in the week. But they last year chose the word grit to be at the center of what they do. And the way they play and the players they brought in, everything they do is about grit. It is about toughness. It's about straining. It's about like just doing all the little things. And that goes from how they coach and how they scheme to just like giving the quarterback the information. We'll go that extra mile for Jared Goff. to the toughness of a guy like Frank Ragnow, who sprained his knee and his ankle in the game and finished it out. Like, they're strong up the middle. They have a great spine. Goff, obviously, at quarterback, but what they've done at the running back position, their investment they've made at the middle of their offensive line, middle linebacker, safety, like they have invested in the right spots. They've built the team the right way, and they've done it not only with investment in the right positions, but with the right people. And for all the meatheads that want to think that developing people doesn't matter, Dan Campbell, who seems like the king of the meatheads, would be the first one to tell you that it's about who, not what they can do as football players. Because that's what happens when you focus on the who, is you get the best out of people. And for people that are this talented, the winning happens almost as a side effect by doing it the right way. And Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes have built a culture there that is unimpeachable. And they're gonna continue to win, in my opinion, for the next couple of years. And because they know how to look for the right things, there's a chance that this has an even longer leash than that, because they'll just keep drafting well. And even later picks, they'll be able to keep the cupboard fresh with good young talent.
Number 6.
The Lions fan base is just as real. It was really cool reading or listening, obviously, to Tirico and them on the broadcast, but like a guy like Steve Levy, who was in the building yesterday, I saw a tweet from him saying, "I've never heard a crowd that loud, and when the offense was on the field, they were dead silent. And, by the way, there were fewer road fans that I've seen at any sporting event maybe in my entire career." And Steve Levy's covered everything NFL, everything college football. He's obviously ESPN's main NHL guy. So he's Stanley Cup playoffs, like everything. Never seen anything like it. And for a fan base that doesn't exactly have a lot of practice in big moments, like, congrats to them. And I hope that's us soon. I hope that's DC here in the next couple of years. But it just goes to show that good ownership goes a long way. And when the ownership changed over within the Firestone Ford family, and they hired Holmes and hired Campbell, like, that went a long, long way. So, it can happen from inheritance and grandma giving up the team, or mom giving up the team, or it can happen from your owner getting pushed out of the league. But ownership makes a huge difference, and that matters. The fan base was incredible. Congrats to the whole entire city of Detroit and Lions fans. You waited a long time for this.
Number 7.
The 49ers did what good teams do, which is figured out when they weren't playing their best, how to win. It was everyone, too. Kittle had a massive drop. Purdy was all over the place. Samuel goes out. And the last drive, offensively, they were nails. They just were like, all right, we got to go. It's time. And they nailed it. And then, obviously, the defensively, they locked in as well. Love, who was doing some good stuff. And they eventually just shut it down in that fourth quarter. Dre Greenlaw, the 2 picks. Also, 7A, if you will, in our 1st and 10. Dre Greenlaw, bro, you got to go down. Oh, my God, what a heart attack he gave Kyle Shanahan. You might just hear about that in Real Things to end the show.
Number 8.
The Packers' future is as bright as anyone's. They're the youngest team in the league. Love looks like he's for real. And Matt LaFleur is every bit as good as the other guys who are in that photo from Washington's 2013 staff. And he's always just an afterthought because Shanahan's kind of the godfather. McVay is McVay. McDaniels is this eccentric personality. And LaFleur was the guy who got to coach Aaron Rodgers and I guess he's pretty good. No, LaFleur's awesome. And good for him for continuing to build it there. They have really set the foundation, and it seems like that Packers team is going to be good for years to come. Sometimes weird stuff happens, but when you're this good and you got the quarterback and you're this young, it seems pretty apparent that if they get the health stuff right, that this team is going to be a perennial playoff contender in the NFC North. So Lions-Packers could be a good one for years to come.
Number 9.
As for some of the teams that got the other teams that got eliminated, Texans and Bucks, they're garden variety, very solid football teams. They're good enough to make it to the playoffs and maybe win a playoff game with the right matchup, which is exactly what they did. But they're just not on the level of these other 4 teams. So for them, hat tip, good job, great seasons. Really happy for both quarterbacks for different reasons that we can get into later in the show. But this was a proper time to exit for both of those teams. And last but not least, the team we haven't talked about yet.
Number 10.
The Baltimore Ravens, this is an earth-shattering analysis, but they are the best team in football, bar none. Great season so far where they have just dominated all comers, and they haven't left a doubt. And I think that's the thing that's so incredible. And at this point, like, there's something about them that still feels a little off to me. But, like, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I know better than this kind of season's worth of results. It just looks different, and I'm accepting that. You'd have to be so obtuse to not think that this is the best team. And does that mean they're going to win the Super Bowl? Not necessarily, but they've got everything. They can pass it, they can run it. Their pass defense is good, their run defense is good, their special teams is always good. They have a great kicker. If that's what you're worried about, like, they've rendered good teams inept. And they've got youth. They've got, like, I got any good thing you can say about an NFL football team, you can say about the Baltimore Ravens. And that's about as good as I can do to try to put it into words of how good this team has been. So off we go to championship weekend. We got a week to talk about it, but that is our wrap, 1st and 10 style on Divisional Weekend. Now, your turn. 301-230-0980. It's the Ace Law listener line, 301-230-0980. What is your one biggest takeaway from Divisional Weekend? Your takes next on the Hoffman Show. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app, and you can give us a call at 301-230-0980. That is the Ace Law listener line. If you're in a wreck, Ace Law helps you get a check. Call 8888 Ace Law. Again, that's 301-230-0980. As we await some calls, Anthony, always at 4:30. We do a little poke, we do a little prod, and then we open the floodgates. So I'm sure they'll flow in momentarily. We're asking on the phone lines, by the way, what is your biggest takeaway from NFL Divisional Playoff Weekend? Anthony, you had a good one when we were talking in the break. What's your big takeaway as you look at these final four teams remaining?
I mean, year after year, I think we've constantly seen, offensive-minded head coach versus another offensive-minded head coach. And I know that's mainly happened in the NFC. I want to say I seen a tweet that said, like, the last 6 NFL NFC championships have featured an offensive-minded head coach versus another offensive-minded head coach.
13 of 14,
I
believe is the number that Grant put out yesterday.
Wow. So, again, I just feel as though as we, look at our offensive head coach search, maybe that is the way we, we go and we try to lean on, the analytics, the numbers in terms of, rebuilding our franchise. Because, again, what Mike Macdonald's doing with the Ravens defense, it's hard to, go against, considering him as a strong favorite. But, we see the Ben Johnson, we see the Bobby Slowicks, and we see what they're doing in the playoffs as well, and their work of art, the last couple of years. So I think as we position ourselves, it's just something to keep in mind, this trend that, these offensive-minded head coaches seem to, continue to end up in these places. So that would be my biggest, takeaway.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great point, and it just, I don't know. To me, offensive coaching is kind of how you shape things in this league. I think a guy like McDonald's super interesting because I think he takes a very offensive approach to defense. Now, that can also backfire. Its name, the backfiring in human form, is Brandon Staley. I remember reading a piece that my friend Jordan Rodriguez wrote in The Athletic back in it would have been 21, whenever it was that Staley was hired, whatever year that was. And she did this really great profile of talking about how he really challenged Sean McVay as a coach. And part of the reason that he was so effective in practice and part of the reason that defense was so good for LA with Staley at the helm and why I would certainly be interested in hiring him as a DC potentially is, and I actually wonder if McVay would want to bring him back if Raheem gets a head coaching job. The more I've thought about some of where these people could go is pretty fascinating. Yeah. There's definitely a lot of options that are pretty scary with some of the coaches that just got fired when you remember how good they were as coordinators. But anyway, the point is, he looked at how Sean was using a guy like Cooper Kupp and was like, how do I do that with Jalen Ramsey? How do I make sure that I position Jalen Ramsey week in, week out to get the best matchup for us? And the thought was he would go to L.A. across town with the Chargers and do the same thing with Derwin James. And the stuff that they were able to do with Aaron Donald, he would do with Nick Bosa. And it never worked out. Or Joey Bosa. It never worked out. There was other things about coaching defense and about coaching NFL football as a head coach that he just clearly wasn't very good at. But a guy like McDonald, I think, takes a pretty interesting approach to defense, and I think his success obviously can't be ignored. I also think you can't ignore, for instance, that Anthony Weaver, the D-line coach and assistant head coach for the Ravens, also is getting head coaching jobs. So, does the league know something there? That it's obviously McDonald's the coordinator, and he's been awesome everywhere he's been. He's come up through the Ravens org. John Harbaugh believes in him. Jim believed in him, and he was awesome his 1 year at Michigan. But does the league know something that there's someone else on that staff that is getting a lot of head coaching looks as well? Versus a guy like Johnson who's kind of yep, nope, that's the guy. Slowick, for instance, even Raheem in LA. There's the D-line coach or the D-backs coach in LA is not getting a look. Raheem Morris is. So I do think that's like an interesting thing that, again, I know it sounds like when I bring that up that I'm like doubting McDonald, and it's more of just like that's a question that I would be curious to have answered, and I don't know. And the truth might be that both of those guys, Weaver and McDonald, are worthy head coaching candidates, and there's a reason why both of them are getting it, and them together is why that team is a superpower, but them apart, they'd be pretty close to as good because they're both really smart. Anyway, I kind of got away from your point of the offensive head coach, but the way you think about offense, the detail you have to think about it, not to mention the continuity that you have to have, or that you can get with your offense and your quarterback, seems like the most important thing. And I pulled up the recent NFC Championship game, so we can go back to, let's see, 2016, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So this year you got Lions and Niners. Campbell's an offensive guy. Kyle is. I mean, Kyle's played in the last 3. Then last year, Sirianni with the Eagles, and then Sean. The Bucks in 2020 had Arians. The Packers in 19, was that McCarthy's last year? Nope, that was LaFleur. Was already there. The Rams and the Saints, Peyton versus Sean. That was the pass interference game.
Yeah.
Eagles and Vikings. I mean, the Vikings 2017 is your last guy. That was Mike Zimmer.
Yep.
That's your one out of the last 14 coaches to appear here. And then 2016 was Atlanta with Dan Quinn, I guess, actually. So maybe it's I guess 12 of 14.
That wasn't Kyle?
No, Kyle was the OC.
Oh, he was.
But Dan Quinn was the head coach.
Yeah.
And then McCarthy was on the other sideline.
Mm-hmm.
And then even before that, 2015, it's the Cardinals under Arians against Ron and the Panthers. Then you have the Seahawks playing multiple years in a row. Obviously, they had Pete Carroll there. Packers with McCarthy, Niners with Harbaugh, the Giants back in the day. Now that we're all the way back to 2011 and Tom Coughlin.
Good gracious.
So
time flies, man.
Yeah, I mean, like, you keep going back, and it's offensive guys up and down, with a rare exception. And especially in the modern era of the league, the last, since 2015 or so, when the league started to get even more and more and more pass happy, it's pretty obvious why those coaches work. And, a lot of them come off the same tree. And it's just the way offense has been able to attack defenses. And I think that part of the reason is, too, and this just goes to, like, kind of how all these coaches think about the game and why someone like Raheem Morris doesn't worry me very much, because I would think he thinks about the game the same way, just from a defensive standpoint, in terms of his background, although he did coach wide receivers and stuff in Atlanta, is they kind of realize that, like, take what the defense gives you is the best way to play. It's like, we're going to build to run the football and then play action off of it. So we're always ready with pass stuff. We're always ready with run stuff. And as defenses have changed and gotten lighter because the league got so pass happy, they've realized there's an inefficiency. Like, so much of success in business, like there's so much of business that doesn't carry over to sports, but there are distinct things that do. And sometimes the best business strategy is just be where they ain't. It's finding a market inefficiency and exploiting it. So it's going, hey, and this is what the Titans did, right? Under Vrabel, with Derrick Henry being the guy. It's like, all right, we're gonna take all these light boxes, and we know that passing the ball is more efficient based off the analytics, but we're gonna build a house of an offensive line that are a bunch of nasty grinders. We're going to put a 235-pound tailback behind them, and we're going to run the ball 30 times a game. And it's going to work because we're going to be the zig when everyone else is zagging. Now, if everybody did that, defenses would adapt. So you have to be ahead of the curve if you're going to zig that hard.
Mm-hmm.
But what Kyle and his tree have discovered is a way to do both at once. Using the play action game, using the run game, using personnel, running out of passing personnel, passing out of running personnel, subverting expectations. Like, these phrases that you hear is the basis of how they build it. And I think thinking about football that way helps you build a roster in a way that you draft a Sam Laporta, you draft a Jahmyr Gibbs if you're Detroit. You find the Deebo Samuels and you're just like, yeah, I know what to do with this guy. What he's great at. Hey, Deebo, go run these routes and we're going to hand you the ball 4 times a game. Like, in some ways, it's as simple as could be. In some ways, it's taking a huge risk because you're bucking tradition, you're bucking logic. Oh, you want to run out of run personnel and pass out of pass personnel. Like, actually, no, we're going to do the opposite. We're going to make it the identity of who we are because we're going to constantly put defenses in a bind. Someone who thinks about football like that, to me, is who I want running my football team. And the numbers would tell you that's incredibly successful because you also tend to think about defense that way and you find guys that have multiple skill sets and yada, yada. But, yeah, I think that's, yeah. Kyle Hamilton, Fred Warner.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you target a different football player, and you see the results. They win. A lot. What was it, 12 of the last 14 in the NFC? I'll look up the AFC number in the break. 301-230-0980 is the Ace Law listener line. What is your biggest takeaway from NFL Divisional Weekend? 301-230-0980. Then Mike Schop joins us from Buffalo coming up at the top of the hour. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We're streaming live on YouTube right now at the Team 980, where people are watching. Anthony, they can see I'm not looking at the camera. I am looking at my laptop off camera. And that's how it's going to be for a moment, because I'll let the audience in on a secret. Mike Schop is going to be on the show at 5 o'clock. He would not be live, something that the YouTube audience would figure out very quickly, because we taped it a little bit earlier today, which means that you can see in the video that I am at home in my home studio, not here sitting across from Anthony at our Team 980 studios. And when I went to export said video, Anthony, my hard drive came undone. So if we want to actually have the Not My Beat segment on schedule next, we're going to have to re-export this guy real quick. Luckily, it's easily done. My hard drive has stopped being a pain in the butt. And we're gonna be good at 5 o'clock.
That scared me a little bit, but I know how the hard drives are. You move it,
mine is so touchy.
Yeah, I'm already knowing. You can barely look at it, to be honest.
I'm just like, oh, okay. Also, do we have a phone charger somewhere around here? Oh wait, is this actually? Oh, there's an iPhone charger in here, bro. I got on the train today to come here. I looked down. My phone's at 19%.
Good gracious.
I was like, when did that happen? I haven't been on my phone that much today. Did I not charge it that last night?
Must not have.
I mean, I know I was listening to some podcasts this morning, but sheesh. Is this not plugged in? Cool. Anthony, there's going to be a day in my life, this life, where all the technology works. That day ain't today.
I'm already knowing. Like
that's right now, I'm going to get to, I want to rant about the worst rule in sports in a second. And I'll get there. But right now, I got a hard drive. Now it's saying it's going to take 6 hours for this thing to export. That ain't right. We're not playing that game. Absolutely not. Replace, export, get on your horse and go. Fight with you in a second. Worst case scenario, Anthony, you'll have the audio. The audio, that I'm not worried about. It's this video that we're in a fight with.
Yeah.
So if you want to see me and Mike Schop on YouTube at 5 o'clock, that could be a problem. Anyway, I got a keyboard that doesn't work for the call screener, which is not why we haven't taken any calls. It's because none of y'all goobers have called yet. With your takeaways from Divisional Weekend, you'd probably rather hear me and Anthony's, which is fine. They do pay us. We don't pay you when you call in. Just, that would be kind of a cool bit, though. What if we paid the callers?
I think there would be a lot of people, including myself, lining up.
We already pay you. Here's what would be fun.
I'll be double dipping.
You could call in and get paid, but only if your call was good. If your call sucks, we charge you.
That would be
high stakes game.
Yeah, that would be tough.
I'm not gonna lie. I kind of like it. I kind of wanna do it. So you got that. Yeah, but I have the call screener keyboard that doesn't work. I got a phone charger that's and an extension cord that's squadoosh. I got a laptop that's giving me absolute hell to try to export this interview. And other than that, how's your technology, Mrs. Lincoln? You get that reference, right?
I didn't catch the name.
It said, other than that, how's the technology, Mrs. Lincoln? As in, there was apparently a reporter back when Abe Lincoln got shot that asked Mary Todd Lincoln, Lincoln's wife, after her husband, the president, Abraham Lincoln, got assassinated. So other than the assassination, how is the play, Mrs. Lincoln? Because they got assassinated down the street at Ford's Theater, or he got assassinated at a play.
Yeah. That's insane.
Yeah.
Never heard that story.
You never heard that phrase?
No.
Okay.
You learn something new every day, Craig.
We're going to have to run this one through the Yates filter. Because last time I tried to clown you about a phrase, I think it was who's on first,
in my defense.
he defended you.
Yes.
And that was unexpected. Yeah, so there's that. Okay, good news. It says 2 minutes on the export, which is about as much time as we have left in this segment. Here's the thing about fumbling the ball through the end zone. It shouldn't matter where the ball goes. This is the dumbest rule in sports, and the Bills got really lucky yesterday, and it's pretty simple. When you fumble the ball on offense, you keep the football if the defense doesn't recover. Them's the rules. And I know that people want to make the end zone the sacred place, but half the arguments I hear are just wrong. For instance, I heard someone on ESPN, a former player today, going, hey, if you catch the ball and get 2 feet down and then I punch it out, oh, it's a touchdown. That doesn't happen in the middle of the field. That's not true. That's not true. You have to finish the catch in the end zone for that exact reason, because it's like, yes, there are magical properties to the end zone. Once you cross the plane, it's touchdown, plays over, unlike, yes, a first down. But the fumble, by nature of what we're talking about here, doesn't happen in the end zone. It happens in the field of play, because if it happened in the end zone, you would have had to have a ball carrier who had possession in the end zone. And thus it would have been a touchdown already. So, what are we talking about here? You're talking about reward. And the other really dumb argument that's happening today is, well, you can't have people having unfettered access to reach for the end zone. McCall Hardman didn't reach for the end zone. McCall Hardman was being McCall Hardman, careless with the football. That's kind of his thing. It's part of the reason he was let go from Kansas City in the first place. And then they ran out of receivers. And they were like, oh, crap, get him back. At least he did something good sometimes. So, at the end of the day, like, we're talking about a recovery, the defense just getting the ball without recovering a fumble? No. The ball doesn't need to go back to the 20. You don't need to penalize it back to the 10. You don't need to invent anything. All you need to do is enforce the rule the way that it is currently written for every other inch of grass, which is, Anthony, you're going to have to turn that light off. Anthony's now having a strobe light situation because we haven't had enough technology issues in the last 7 minutes. The point is, when you fumble the ball on offense and it goes out of bounds, you should return to the spot of the fumble no matter where the ball goes out of bounds. That's the end. That's my little rant. And if you're trying to make up any other explanation, it's going to be really hard to be simpler than the argument I just made, which is why the one I just made is the correct one. When we get back on the Hoffman Show, Mike Schop from WGR in Buffalo talking about yet another sad day after a painful Bills loss. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Still to come on the show today, we go around the NFL, review each and every game, also our picks coming up at 5:30. Then at 6 o'clock, the latest on the Commanders coaching search. Eric Bieniemy interviewed today. We'll talk about that, why they would do it, why it's a good idea, why it might be a bad idea, et cetera, et cetera. Also, coming up a little bit later in the show, kind of news and notes section, if you will. We'll get you caught up on every single coordinator and head coaching interview over the weekend, including the latest on, Ron Rivera, former Commanders head coach, interviewing in Philadelphia. Chris, you can just come in normal. You'll be fine. Everybody say hello to Chris Russell. There he is. Yep, he's still here. It's okay. He just had to get his bag. I knew earlier you weren't going to be able to leave without your coat, so I put that out there for you. Then I realized your bag was there because your keys were in your coat. Yeah, okay. Well, he's very seemingly in a hurry not to entertain my nonsense right now. Anthony, I thought he would enjoy being more of a part of the show. He just came in and he tried to do that quietly. I should have known.
Yeah, he continued to do more and more radio after his show. So
yeah, I think he was doing a podcast.
Yeah, he might be all radioed out.
Yeah, that's fair.
He might be tired.
Might be. I got 6 jobs.
You won't get tired.
I don't get tired. All right. So that's still coming later on in the show. Right now, though, by the way, also typically Mondays, Michael Phillips for Not My Beat. Phillips out today. So Michael is going to join us tomorrow at this time. But now, without further ado, let's get you today's edition of Not My Beat.
I definitely forgot you have no computers. Does this one not work?
Which one?
That one.
The one in front of me does, but I when I said I sent it to you.
Oh, no, I have. I thought you were playing the imager, though.
It's got the imager in the interview. Wow.
Oh, man.
Honestly,
let's
hold on before you hit play, Anthony. I just want to apologize to the audience. This might be the worst radio show we've ever done in 2 years, and some of it's our fault. Some of it, I think, if I was doing a radio show about this radio show, I might be like, you want to know what? Craig and Anthony have faced a lot of circumstances today. Technology really was not their friend. They weren't necessarily set up for success. There's also some things that they probably could have been better prepared for that could have avoided some of those pitfalls. They could have gotten ahead of things and listened to things ahead of time or exported files so that it didn't just at the last minute be a surprise that something was going to happen or not happen. All that is true. And we could be kind to ourselves and say that. Or we can just apologize to you, the audience. And from this point forward, when we get out of this taped interview, which is only a few hours old and is still very relevant, so please, treat it as if it's live. The information's just as good. We're going to do better. That's on the start. We're going to hit play and it'll be better from there because the mic is fantastic. I know because it's a taped interview. So really good stuff coming for the next 15 minutes. But when we get back to talking to you live, we're going to do better. I'm putting a stop to it right now. And with that, it's time for Not My Beat.
Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not My Beat.
On a day, I should say, where the Buffalo Bills are kind of in the eye of the NFL's attention, we are going to go to Buffalo and talk to our guy, Mike Schop, WGR, longtime radio host up there, Schop and the Bulldog. And Mike, you and I, we're talking a little bit earlier in the day to set this up, and he said, I'm used to this. This is unfortunately a thing that folks that have been around Buffalo and are Bills fans are just used to at this point. What's it like in Buffalo today on a day where, you lose another heartbreaker in the playoffs, and especially even for this generation of Bills fans, to that team from Kansas City again?
Well, I think in a word, maybe above all other words, it's sad because this team has been so good and so close for now 5 years, at least 4. And that makes it not unique, but, a kind of a rare situation. It's complicated. You don't know maybe how critical to really be. Last year, they had DeMar Hamlin go down. They end up as the 2 seed. They lose to the Bengals, and a lot of people were like, you can't blame them. They're exhausted. I mean, to have to go through that. And there was a blizzard last year. You know, a lot of things came up, real life things that probably attributed to their, running out of gas, if you will. And this year, really, I'm still kind of processing it, but it's not that different. I mean, they had a tough season at times, especially earlier with some weird, almost inexplicable losses, and then they got right. And they, because of how the season started, they put themselves in a position where they needed to win like 10 straight. And they, maybe not that surprisingly, couldn't get there playing this kind of competition. So post-game shows, day after shows, after losses like that are a combination of here's why they lost, here's what they got wrong, why did they spend money on this guy, everything that a fan has thought for months, perhaps, is sort of back on the table. And it's just like, all right, I'm not sure I want to be scrutinizing this to that extent already. Let's have a drink, take a shower, take a look at it. And really, the city is just disappointed that, again, they're with the Chiefs at home. This was supposed to be, different, and it wasn't.
Yeah, no, I think you make such a great point. I thought about this during the game, early in the game yesterday, about just how many games in a row they were going to need to win the Super Bowl, and the improbability of that, because they were the hottest team in football. But the reality is eventually there's going to be at least a little bit of regression to the mean. And a 3-point loss to a very good Chiefs team is, call that regression to the mean or just the law of averages, whatever it is. I guess I would be curious too of I know I'm kind of now asking you to thing that you're not ready to do yet, but do you feel like this is something that this team can move on from and they come back again and they can try again next year? Or is this some kind of final breaking point where you just go, we need to do something major and change it up? Obviously, Josh Allen's going to be the centerpiece, but what is the kind of feelings of where this team tries to go from here?
So not explicitly necessarily, but the way I've looked at how they've sort of laid out their timetable is the offseason before last. I think they might have looked at it as a 2-year opportunity. Not that Allen will have aged out, far from it, but with
today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
They needed to win 10 straight.
The reality is eventually
I think they might have working Diggs, adding Von Miller, Oliver, Dawson Knox. So they really have spent up. And Leonard Floyd acquired this year, not big money, but veterans, keeping Jordan Poyer after it was suspected that he would leave. There's just been that sort of mentality, which I absolutely do not blame them for. I mean, that's what you do in sports. They're close. Now, I think they're forced into a situation where they're going to have to revamp a little bit. Maybe that's Von Miller. That's a huge dead cap number. This is a day they knew was coming. They just wanted to have a ring by now, and instead they don't even have an AFC championship in these 2 seasons. So I'm not sure what they'll do, but this is a turning point, I think, for the Allen Bills, where they had the rookie contract year. They didn't quite get there. They had this year where they pushed in even further. And now, I mean, they're old, Craig. They're old. They've got money tied up in a lot of players, Stephon Diggs included. The way last night went and his season went, just really downhill. He's going to be an interesting one, if not exhausting one to talk about. So there will have to be changes, and I welcome it for them. I think that it's an opportunity to get younger. The team they lost to last night won a Super Bowl last year doing that. They traded Tyreek, and they felt like they had to step back a little bit, and they won anyway. And I think Allen gives you such a high floor as a player that the Bills could easily do that. I mean, they went 11-6. They don't need to have all those veterans to go 11-6.
Yeah, Mike Schop is with us, WGR in Buffalo. This is the fascinating conversation that happens for you. That we have not had this kind of conversation here. The last time they won 11 games was 1991 for the Commanders franchise. So, ever it's one thing to try to get to that double-digit win kind of team when you're an 8-8 team or you're a 6-win team. You're kind of in that bottom to middle frequently where most of the NFL exists. But when you get a guy like you guys have with Allen, it's how do you maintain a window? And and that also comes up like to the coaching stuff too of like, okay, if you're winning 11, 12 games every year, obviously this guy's good enough to get us there, but is it the right guy to get us to the next level to win that championship? So long wind up to ask, like, what is the future for Sean McDermott, coordinators, and even higher than that, Brandon Beane, the GM who built this thing, and the thing that ultimately comes up short again?
It's such a hard question. You never really know. Like, did Andy Reid have to leave Philadelphia? I mean, then he went to Kansas City, and look at this. You never really know. You not that I need to go here, but you might have had it with the Capitals or even the Nationals in Washington. Where,
for sure.
You could get to right here, and then what do you do about it?
Right.
And this is interesting. Like, as I start our off season here, last year and a little bit even the year before that, McDermott has his critics. Too conservative, big games. They can't win with them. And I've never wanted to settle for that because I remember the Manning Colts, and teams where you can't win until you do, then you could have won. And I've said a lot, like, I can't imagine the Bills having the same season in 2023 and wanting them to change coaches. Like, there's a lot I don't like about McDermott's style, but I still think that that's probably crazy and unlikely. And I guess I put myself there, so I'm still there. Like, I think it's probably a management team that considers themselves very lucky to have Sean McDermott, maybe not even understanding what the criticisms are about. But one of these years, it will be one too many, right? If it just never changes, he doesn't have the job for life. So I'd expect him back. He is the defensive side of the ball. Again, we have a playoffs where the offensive coaches, not entirely necessarily because of their own doing. One of them has Patrick Mahomes. One of them has, Goff. But offensive coaches are in the championship round again. And that's sort of the quandary when it comes to McDermott, and always has been. Like, you hire a defensive coach, you lose your OC, like Daboll left. So I guess it's day one. I'm not expecting changes, but it wouldn't be unprecedented, would it?
No, for sure. And, we're obviously going through that conversation here in DC when people are like, go hire Mike McDonald from Baltimore. And it's like, okay, well, what happens when? Or, do you go just hire the offensive guy? Which brings, I guess, to the logical follow-up, Mike, being like, what do you do for the offensive guy? They fired Ken Dorsey middle of the season. The numbers got worse, but you didn't lose. So something changed that was good for the results. Maybe it was just the luck. Is Joe Brady back with Josh Allen next year in an offseason to put his spin on this thing? Or do they go out and try to find someone else to coach up Josh Allen next year?
I would guess Brady is back, assuming like he doesn't get hired somewhere. Atlanta had some interest, and he's a little bit of a name, but was only on this job for half a season. And I bet to the Bills, they thought it went well. Even last night. I mean, they had such a strange game to lose.
I mean, Diggs catches that bomb from Allen, and we're talking about a totally different ball game.
Yeah. Or even after that, where
or pick another half dozen plays.
Those two plays from the 2-minute warning, the two passes before the missed field goal. That's sports. Like, I don't know. I think Brady turned this team 90 degrees to a run-heavy team, kind of like out of nowhere. And it always worried me because they were winning those games, but they were barely winning. The Chargers and the Patriots, the Steelers, even a little bit. Like, where did the passing game go? And now they're throwing for 186 last night, even without a sack or a turnover. Game script doesn't explain that. Allen completed 2 passes on 45 dropbacks last night that went for more than 8 yards in the air. What happened? So they have to find some speed. They have to find better playmakers. That's been a recurring thought here for a few years, and they haven't really sufficiently done that. I bet if Brady fit into McDermott's ethos, which watching them run the ball all the time, I feel like he almost definitely did, then I feel like he's back if he wants to be.
All right, wrapping up here with Mike Schop. Actually, I'm gonna try to think of a happier note to end on, but in the absence of thinking of a happier note to end on, the fact that it ultimately ends with a kick that goes wide right. I think anybody who is a neutral, nevertheless rooting for Buffalo in the game, nevertheless an actual Bills fan, nevertheless a lifelong Buffalo person like yourself, as soon as that kick starts to fade, you're going, anything but this. They can lose. Please don't make it be like this. Like, I don't even know if there's a question here, Mike. the fact that it ends like that, what?
What's left? That's right.
Yeah.
What's left to have to? It didn't happen in a Super Bowl is the only thing that makes it better. Is that even better? I don't know. I think about Scott Norwood himself when this happens.
Yeah.
Like, just great. This is what I needed. You know, I've been retired for 30 years, and now I have to hear my name all the time again if I'm even sort of paying attention. But that's how it goes, right? Like when they lost 2 years ago. It's not even 2 years yet to the day, that 13 seconds game in Kansas City.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of us thought this will be there forever until they win. And wide right has been that too. Like, it's what, in a phrase, it's what the 90s Bills are sort of known as. And that doesn't go away until you win, or maybe even win multiple times. And, you know, like teams do, they change the script. So, yeah, I mean, it took me the ball hadn't actually crossed the goal line yet in the air on the field goal before I, and probably half the stadium at least, was thinking, okay, here we go, wide right. Couldn't even have been wide left. Couldn't even have been block.
Can we get a mix up?
Just block it.
All right, here's my happier note to end on. With Mike Schop, WGR in Buffalo, of course, host of Schop and the Bulldog up there. You still do have Josh Allen, which is nice. Is there, like, I have been able to witness this from afar, and like, you see who Josh Allen is as a person, nevertheless as a football player, and he seems so beloved in that community. Is that still solid? Is that still whole? Like, is in general, there's always going to be, you know, a fan base is not a monolith, but generally speaking, is there still like that comfortability, that excitement about saying, hey, all right, at least we still have Josh Allen, and whatever we do moving forward, we're comfortable with Josh Allen as our guy, even if he hasn't gotten us to the promised land quite yet?
Yes. I don't think there's really any significant faction of the fan base that would be critical of him through this. McDermott gets criticized quite a lot, but Allen has, I think, convinced the masses that he's good enough to win with. I don't think that sort of eagerness in your question will manifest until much closer to the season, right? Because there has to be a sort of a grieving period, if you will, first. But yeah, like when we get to summer and he's on the field, and there'll probably be some new weapons and other players to get excited about, I think fans can feel really optimistic about him. The thing that is interesting right now, though, Craig, is like, here's the AFC, and Mahomes has won here to go to a 6th straight AFC championship and 1 game away from a 4th Super Bowl, and he might be 28. Burrow has done it, and he's done it through Mahomes, and he's done it through Buffalo. And it could be that Lamar Jackson gets there and wins a 2nd MVP. There are 3 players who've won multiple MVPs that are not in the Hall of Fame: Rodgers, Brady, and Mahomes. So Jackson joins that list. And where are you? You know, you have Allen, but it's plainly clear at this point that he doesn't set you apart from those teams. He gives you a chance against those teams. And the Bills have tried to find other ways to win, loading up on edge rushers, and now they're going to run the ball all the time, and they haven't done it. So a team can really sort of get messed up after this stretch of seasons where they might think they're out of ideas and end up making, you know, bad decisions, just gambles, you know, whatever that might be. But yeah, Allen is great, and the fans fully, concur.
Yeah. Someone reporting live from the quarterback desert. Enjoy it up there, Buffalo. Enjoy it up there. Mike Schop on WGR up in Buffalo. If you want to kind of get a taste of the local Buffalo coverage, just search that station and you can listen to it and hear Mike and his co-hosts doing the same thing they've been doing for how many years now, Mike? How many years you guys been manning the airwaves? 21 years. Doing a great job up there. Mike, always appreciate your time here in DC. Thank you very much, and we'll talk to you down the line.
Thank you, Craig. Always enjoy our chats. Thanks a lot.
Hey, this is DA, and you're listening to The Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.
It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Coming up at the top of the hour, the latest on the Commanders coaching search. Got some audio of some reporters on a couple other shows today with some updates and, of course, our own thoughts on, for instance, the Commanders interviewing Eric Bieniemy. So what do we make of that? A thing, a not a thing, a real candidate, not a real candidate, why it's a good idea, why it's a bad idea. We'll get to all that coming up in the 6 o'clock hour. Right now, though, at 5:30 on a Monday, it is time for us to look back at the NFL weekend and break down the games. We'll do two in the next segment. Anthony, if there was only a way to divide the games, 2 and 2. All right, there were 2 Saturday and 2 Sunday. So let's go in chronological order. Let's start with the Saturday tilt between the Texans and the Ravens. And, I mean, this game was close for a long time. And then the Ravens just showed to be a completely different team. 60-minute game, whole deal. By the end of it is a blowout. And, they score 17 in the fourth. It's really only close in the first half, too, because you get that Steven Sims Jr. punt return from the Texans. By the way, did you know that he was still in the league?
I did not know he was still in the league. Last I heard of Steven Sims, he was a returning punch for the Steelers. That might have been like 2 years ago.
Yeah, he's had a wild, crazy career, obviously starting here in D.C., and it's just another reminder of, some of the talented people that have been let out the doors here, specifically at returners. It's like, why did you not re-sign DeAndre Carter? Why did you not keep Steven Sims just to be the returner, even if you didn't think he'd develop as a receiver? Just a lot of decisions that seem silly, but also Sims, to his credit, got to a point where a playoff team was relying on him in a big spot because he did have a fumble problem here, and he wasn't reliable. And players grow, and it doesn't just because a guy doesn't work out in one place on a certain timeline doesn't mean that the team that let him go failed. Although It does make it very difficult to see a guy who you let go return a punt for a touchdown in the playoffs when you haven't sniffed the playoffs in a long time. But I think, people are gonna make this, and we're gonna talk about this more in the 6 o'clock hour as well. McDonald beats Slowick head coaching wise. Why would anyone hire Slowick over McDonald, or why would anyone hire Slowick? Blah, blah, blah. And I think this is much more about the players on the field than it is the coaches. These are 2 very well-coached teams at this stage of things, but the Ravens have better players, and they executed it at an extremely high level when push came to shove. I mean, Lamar, some of the throws he makes, the throw he makes to Likely, the play that Likely makes for the touchdown, that's big-time stuff. He has obviously a couple of big carries. The way that Todd Monken calls that offense in Baltimore, next year, he's going to be one of the top head coach candidates on the market, I think. And his name has come up a little bit this year, but it seems like people want him to be another year in the NFL after, being great at Georgia and what he's done with Lamar this year, leading him to probably an MVP season. But you look at the balance they have running the football, the different backs, how and when they choose to run Lamar to maximize his efficacy as a runner. He winds up over 100 yards, and that defense is just gross. That's the thing that I think is so crazy about Baltimore, and is their linebackers especially, but their team speed in general. They're just on guys. You catch the ball, and there's no space. Either you have an incompletion and you can't catch it, or you catch it and you're tackled immediately. They're sure tacklers. They're right on you. They don't allow explosive plays. They're just an excellent freaking defense. And a huge part of that is what McDonald does, but a huge part of that is they've got a great D-line with sensational linebackers and Kyle Hamilton and company in the back end. They're just good at all 3 levels.
Yeah, well, Mike McDonald is doing, and the thing is, I think the defense is getting more attention than, the offense. The offense is still, going out there, executing, putting up numbers, but I think the defense is what everyone gets so excited about. And Craig, this wasn't the first time that Mike McDonald, stymied that Texans offense. This was the second time they faced each other. And the fact that, McDonald's been able to do this against the league's, best offensive. He went to San Fran, won the game. He beat Detroit, held them to 3 points. The Dolphins, they blew them out 56-19. So it's not it's just the manner in which, you know, this Mike Macdonald-led defense is doing to these prominent offenses around the NFL. And it's just, you know, I think it's very Baltimore Ravens-like, you know, a lot of grit, a lot of, you know, physicality. Just, I love what the Ravens
They're so
are doing.
good. And the thing is, like, maybe, just maybe, it wasn't Mike Macdonald doing this twice to Bobby Slowick. It's like, maybe it's the Ravens have great players, and that's why they're able to do it consistently. It's not some schematic magic. And, like, he just puts them in position to succeed, and they do because they're great. Like, it's both.
But
it is both,
You
for
got
sure.
Ron Darby out there.
Yeah.
To be honest, like, going into the season, I couldn't tell you, except probably like one person or two people, like, who was in the defensive backfield for the Ravens. You got Marcus Williams, and then you got
Marlon Humphrey.
Oh, well, he's hurt.
Right. But, like, going into the season,
yeah.
it was like Marlon Humphrey.
Yeah.
Is Hamilton going to take
yep.
off as a sophomore?
Uh-huh.
And then we'll see.
They had a whole bunch of question marks, but I just feel like, you know, the Stevens, like, he was a converted safety. Now he's playing corner, so
Yeah.
it's a testament to, like, what Mike McDonald has been able to do.
It
for
is.
them.
And I think, you know, it's not just schematically for McDonald. Like, to give him the credit where it's due, right? I'm not trying to just push back against anything. Just like, it's all the players. Like, they have done such a good job, and this is years long, but McDonald certainly fits into this. They teach at such a high level, right? So that's how you take – because and I guess why, like, sometimes people – I just get tired of the McDonald scheming it up. He doesn't do anything that spectacular schematically. He calls a really good game, good situations, mixes it up enough. They bring good simulated pressures. They bring good pressures. But, like, they're just so solid in what they do, which is both the players being great and they teach at such a high level. And ultimately, especially defensively, that's what matters. You want to see badly taught football? Look at the Washington Commanders in 2023. You want to see well-taught football? Look at the Baltimore Ravens in 2023. Like, that's the magic. That is position coaches, coordinator, head coach, all being on the same page with a vision and being able to teach globally, hey, this is what we are trying to do. And as part of that, here's what you need to do. It is so clear when you watch them because everyone is so assignment disciplined. And the reason I think that's more important defensively than offensively versus, like, you can kind of scheme it up, win with the pen more on offense is what are the two keys for defense? Assignment and alignment. Do you know where you're supposed to be, and do you know what you're supposed to do? And those guys do at a high level. And, by the way, they're super capable because they're good players. That's the magic of McDonald. And, by the way, that is a really, really good characteristic to have in a head coach. I want someone who's a great teacher because I want you to be able to understand what it is that you're trying to get accomplished to any player on the field, offense or defense, and be able to help that position coach or that coordinator if it's not clicking. Like, let's say, you know, Terry McLaurin's not getting something, and Mike McDonald's a head coach, and the OC and him can't get on the same page. If McDonald understands what's supposed to be happening, he can be like, hey, we're trying to get this, do this, work with the receiver coach, get this technique. Like, that's a good thing to have as a head coach. So, yeah, their whole organization is just top-notch, and this seems like a culmination of a lot of work. I also can't wait for when they win the whole freaking thing for everyone to do the dumb Lamar narrative of like, oh, why didn't everybody go after Lamar? See, he's great. Yeah, you know what that's proving? The rest of us who said there's no way Baltimore would ever let him leave because they knew he was this good. You're proving our point, not yours. Please learn about restricted free agency. Okay. Meanwhile, Texans, I don't really have a lot to say here. Like, hats off. Hats off to D'Amico. What you're building is amazing. You've got some really, really impressive young players who are not just great players, but great from a culture standpoint and what you're trying to build moving forward. Obviously, Stroud is phenomenal. The moment was not too big for him. The other team was better. Like, they got beat. It wasn't like they necessarily beat themselves. They got beat because nobody's open ever because the Ravens are super good at what they do. And that's kind of that. And then Lamar did Lamar stuff. So there is a lot of learning, I think, and a lot of discipline that needs to happen on that team. It's a fairly young team. Yep. But like the penalties on the offensive line were brutal for them in this game. That is the one area where they kind of beat themselves. But it also felt like some of, hey, Baltimore's got the screws turned on us. We're a little tight. We're a little tense. And I think that's more of a maturity thing that'll happen for them probably as soon as next year. And then obviously the big question for D'Amico is going to be, if Slowick gets a job, who do you have as the OC? And if not, and you get lucky, you better start grooming somebody, because that dude ain't going to be here. Like, he's got 1 year left max.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. All right. Meanwhile, Packers, 49ers. I mean, the nails just end of the game. Brock Purdy, I've been kind of terrible. Not terrible, but like I've been kind of mad most of the game. I'm just going to put together a literal perfect drive. Unbelievable. The way they use Ayuk, the way they use McCaffrey, closing it off. I mean, Kittle has a big drop, but has some big catches as well. And they get Jawan Jennings involved a ton. Like, they figured out how to shift eventually without Debo. And, oh, by the way, this defense is really good and makes plays. Like, I feel really good about the fact that I picked this team to win the Super Bowl. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, considering all the adversity the 49ers had to go through, I think they needed this going into next week against the Lions. Look, they're battle-tested. Brock Purdy proved that, he can overcome some challenges. And I think a lot of people, like I saw Ryan Clark talking about, Purdy shouldn't be in a conversation with all the other quarterbacks that are still left remaining.
Yeah.
I think he's done just enough to a point where he deserves the respect. Like, even though, he might not be a Josh Allen that can go out there and win the game.
Of course.
I just feel as though
But that's not his job, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the thing, is like, who's the best player on the team? Mahomes is. Allen is. Lamar is. Like,
you're not gonna say that
for Goff and for Goff Goff's more in the middle, obviously. But for Goff and for Purdy, their job is to get the ball to the good guys. They're not the good guys themselves. They're very good at what they do. But like their job, it's like, if you're playing point guard with Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, like back when, going old school here, back when like Jared Jack was a member of the Warriors early in the dynasty days, or like, you're Draymond Green on offense. Your job is to set screens and make passes. Your job ain't to shoot, bro. And so Brock Purdy's job is to quickly and efficiently get the ball to Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, whatever. And he's really good at it, just like Draymond is really good at it for the Warriors. I know Draymond's a complicated figure. Don't worry about that right now. Just focus on how good he is as a passer. He makes the right read, gets the right guy the open shot, and you let them do the hard thing, make it. That is ultimately the job of Brock Purdy, is like, I got Debo, who, by the way, I was just checking my phone because I saw an alert come in the last commercial break, and I didn't get a chance to read it, but read it real quick. No fracture for Debo Samuel, so he could be back this weekend. But Debo, McCaffrey, Kittle, Jennings, Ayuk, like all these dudes are studs. All he's got to do is read the defense, put the ball where it's supposed to be, and let them cook, and he's excellent at that. Meanwhile, on the Packers side of it, obviously, they're super young.
Yep.
They're really good. As long as Love continues to get better, they're going to be around for a long time. If Love winds up being a dude and they go Favre, Rodgers, Love, that is the stupidest luck that any franchise has ever had. Like, the Chicago Bears in their division have never had one good quarterback in the history of their franchise. One. For any extended period of time. Like, we're talking Sid Luckman in the 40s, I think it is, right? That's about as good as it got. The Packers might go, they went 2 Hall of Famers in a row, even if both of them, we found out, turned out to be turds. And then we'll see what Love is. Hopefully, what if Love winds up being better than both those guys and is a good person? That'd be cool. No welfare scam frauds. No whatever the hell Aaron Rodgers is doing. That'd be cool. Go Pack, go.
Go Pack, go.
All right. When we get back, we'll take a look at the Sunday games, and then 6 o'clock, we dive back into the Commanders coaching search. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Coming up in the 6 o'clock hour, we will discuss more about the Commanders' ongoing head coaching search, the latest interview news, and some thoughts on the candidates being interviewed. Right now, though, we finished going around the NFL, breaking down the games from divisional round weekend. By the way, Anthony, on the picks front, both 2-0 on Saturday, Ravens, Niners.
Yes, sir.
And then we both had the Lions.
Yes.
And then we split the game that we're going to talk about last, and I'm not thrilled about it.
I know.
I almost feel like I should get credit. Anyway, we'll get there. Lions 31, Tampa Bay 23. Bucks a chance to make it interesting late, but Baker Mayfield the pick. How about that being the first career interception for Derek Barnes? What a time to get it, to seal a playoff game and a chance to go to the NFC title game for the first time since 1991 for the Detroit Lions. Goff, 30 of 43 for 287. They rushed for 114 as a team, 74 from Gibbs, 33 from Montgomery. And the thing that I think is so impressive, we talk about all the different things I like about Ben Johnson and this Lions offense and why I think it's, I was talking about what they do in Detroit far before it was like, yep, definitely having a head coach opening. Yep, Ben Johnson's the guy. And we always had an eye on it because, let's be honest, we kind of knew coming into the year. But I think even going back to last year, something that really impressed me, they get the ball to their best players. It is essential to who they are. Look at the targets for this game, right? Here are the targets. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 14 targets. Sam Laporta, 11 targets. Jahmyr Gibbs, 4 targets plus another 9 carries. Montgomery, 10 carries. Jamison Williams, 4 targets. Many of them were deep shots. They're so good at finding their guys in the right positions. They use their personnel. One, they were like, we need dudes at these positions. They went out and got them from a roster construction standpoint, which obviously goes beyond the offensive coordinator, but starts with the offensive coordinator and the head coach, in Dan Campbell, who's got an offensive background, having a distinct vision for what they want to be. And they built a stud offensive line, and then they were like, okay, now time for the skill positions. We want a fast, quick guy running back. Let's go get Jahmyr Gibbs. We want a stud tight end. Let's go get Laporta. Amon-Ra St. Brown's exactly what we want in a receiver, and they've done a great job. Shout out to Antoine Randall, former Washington receiver, who's now the wide receivers coach up there. He's done a tremendous job. Reynolds is like a pretty solid receiver, and he always seems to come up with big catches, first downs, touchdowns. So they do a good job of giving Goff a bunch of information, setting him up to succeed based off formation, personnel, and not having distinct tendencies. And the result is they've been one of the best teams in football, period, one of the best offenses for sure, for a season and a half. Since the middle of last year, they just turned it on. And really, they were pretty good offensively at the start of last year, too. Really, for 2 years, they've been a stud offense. Aaron Glenn finally figured out the defense midway through last year. And they've lost 5 games since the middle of last year. They're for real, man. And if it wasn't Lions on the jersey, I think no one would even think twice. They wouldn't be like some Cinderella team. The only reason it feels like Cinderella is because they've stunk most of their history, because they're the Lions.
Yeah. Can't really, say how. I want to say I'm proud of the Lions.
I love it. I'm so in. I was in from Hard Knocks last year. I came out of Hard Knocks being like, they're going to be good. I don't know that it'll be good now, but I love what they're building. They're doing it the right way. I love that they emphasize character and who these people are and developing them as men. And I heard this great. I'm going to actually pull this up. Anthony, say smart football things while I find this exact quote.
The Lions have trusted the process, and it's also a testament because guess what? They have 2 total playoff wins since, I want to say, 1996 or whatever it was, and Dallas only seems to have 1. And somehow Dallas is always a favorite to win the Super Bowl. And Dallas, this was just some time to
Dallas's
slam
playoff
those.
disappointments are unbelievable.
Yeah.
Because there are 2 NFC teams since '96
Oh, the graphic
that haven't been to an NFC Championship game.
Only
One
2.
is the Commanders,
Yep.
which makes sense based off the regular seasons they've had. And the other is the Dallas Cowboys, who have won 12 games, a bunch during that stretch, and still have never made it. Like, they've had byes. All they've had to do is win 1 playoff game.
Yep. Couldn't do it.
Closest they came was the game where Dez caught it, which he did catch it.
Yeah.
But what you going to do? This is from a guy named Steve Magnus, who's like an author and coach and just overall incredibly smart human being. A coach's job is to develop people. That's the secret to great coaches. Their job isn't winning. That's an effect. Why? Obsessive focus on the outcome shifts your motivation and perspective. You stop seeing athletes as people. You treat them accordingly. They stop developing. There's a reason Bill Walsh wrote a book called The Score Takes Care of Itself, and John Wooden said the same thing. Saban preached process, and others, he continues to go on, like running coaches and some folks that the natural, like our listeners probably haven't heard of, and frankly that some of them I haven't heard of. It's not that winning doesn't matter. Of course, these coaches are competitive and want to win, but they realize that focusing on winning drags you away from the things that help you perform best. That is the approach the Lions have taken under Campbell, and that is why they will continue to win. Because also those things allow you to focus on what makes winning players, and that helps your scouting process, which is why I think they will continue to draft well. Obviously, Brad Holmes seems to have a good eye for talent, but they know what they're looking for, and they know what fits. And so, well, yeah, eventually they're going to have to pay some of these guys and make some tough decisions. If they can keep identifying the right positions, the right people, they'll replenish the cupboard and they'll be able to go on a pretty good run here until Goff isn't good anymore or costs too much money and, whatever. But, like, I think they're going to be in it for a long time. I could see Campbell there for 20 years like Peyton was. I mean, Sean Payton was the guy that he worked under, right? He came out of that tree. And I could see Campbell having a Peyton-esque run in like he did in New Orleans. Of course, it helped that he had Breeze for most of those 20 years, but we'll see what Campbell can do in Detroit. Last but not least, Chiefs and Bills. We've talked about it. As soon as I made the pick in this game, Anthony, I said I regret picking against Mahomes. I wanted to switch, and I let you keep the Chiefs, because you said you were going to fade me no matter what I did, and I just let you keep the Chiefs.
Yep.
I knew in that moment, sorry, Buffalo, that I was not going to get the correct pick.
Buffalo could have won, though, man.
They could have, but they didn't. That's kind of how this has gone.
Yeah. So close. It's not close enough.
No. They ran it effectively. They threw it when they needed to.
Do you think they got too predictable in the fourth, though? Like, in the third quarter when they were running the ball, like...
Who, Buffalo or Kansas City?
Buffalo. Because
no,
I
think
feel like
they did. I agree.
Every time, like, they got the ball in the fourth quarter, they started out with 6 offensive linemen, and they tried to go inside zone. And Kansas City, they already knew what was coming, so... I don't know.
Well, then
what
they
Buffalo
would get,
was
like,
doing
they would actually run the ball pretty well.
Yeah.
And they'd get a couple of chunks, and then they just start passing it. And you're like, dude, go back to the run.
Yeah.
I don't get why coaches abandon the run when it works. It's like, we did it. We checked the box. It's like, keep doing it.
Because they were winning the trenches battle, like,
they were
first
getting
half.
movement.
Yeah.
Movement, bro. Yeah. For more on Buffalo, rewind. Or check out the Hoffman Show podcast. This hour is about to go up in the feed any moment, as soon as I stop yapping. And Mike Schop and I talked about the Bills' end of season and where they go from here at the top of the hour. Definitely worth a listen in the Hoffman Show podcast feed. When we get back, though, latest on the Commanders coaching search and why, despite the fact that we will spend a lot of time talking about the NFL playoffs, you should consider the coaching results from the playoffs a lot less than you probably are when it comes to finding a head coach. I'll explain that nonsensical sentence next on the Team 980. the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Coming up in 10 minutes, more on Eric Bieniemy interviewing with the Commanders over the weekend, and much more on the Commanders coaching search, the latest kind of what happens now, the next steps, who they can interview, who they are interviewing, who they're not going to. We'll get y'all caught up at 6:15. Then we'll kind of go around the NFL news style at 6:30, get you updated on all of the other teams and their coaching searches, some injury news from the playoffs, teams signing players, including a former All-Pro today. So there's a lot of stuff happening around the NFL that we will spend our next half hour, actually the next 45 minutes on as we steamroll towards 7 o'clock. But, Anthony, I kept seeing, and I got like some tweets asking me about this, and like one of them was worded this way, which is basically, hey, I think, the Lions and obviously the Lions and the Ravens could wind up playing each other in the Super Bowl. Could the Commanders wait and see who wins the matchup between Ben Johnson and Mike McDonald to and then pick the winner as their head coach? And I was just like, what? Let me not be dismissive. Let me not be pejorative. Let me not be a jerk. I understand the question. It's not like I don't get it, right? Oh, well, hey, we got candidate A, we got candidate B. What if they could fight and the winner's the one that we choose? Voila. Like, yeah, of course that makes logical sense. But the problem is the fight isn't over. Like, it's not a fight. We're not picking our fighter to go pick to then have the same fight. You're asking people to do the jobs they have now with the pieces they have around them now, and then ultimately use that information to predict if they'll be good at another job with almost none of those people moving forward. So seeing if Mike McDonald could shut down Ben Johnson, to frame it even as if that framing is even accurate, is not actually that helpful of a piece of information. I want to know how they'd be as a head coach. How you do as a coordinator is important. It's really important, especially if you're going to be the coordinator. But how you do in terms of wins and losses is obviously very dependent on the players and the organization that you have. And a guy like Sean McVay has done just fine, even though he never got to an NFC championship game and never won a playoff game as a coordinator here in Washington. In fact, his last game with Washington was terrible. 2016 versus the Giants, week 17. It's one of the worst 5 games that Kirk Cousins had as a Commander or as a Washington football player. And Sean coordinated that game. And then a week later, the Rams hired him. And I think they're pretty happy. And it wasn't that whoever the DC in New York was that day was like a better head coaching candidate and would have actually won 3 Super Bowls in the time that Sean has won 1 with the Rams. It's that they're different jobs. And I think that there is this obsession with the results right now because it's the only new information available compared to what we've seen them do over time and the piece of information that we don't have. Because again, you want to judge they went head to head. Because you want to know who's the DC of 2016 New York Giants? It was Steve Spagnuolo, who's an incredible defensive coordinator. Maybe on the all-timers list for great coordinator, not very good head coach. Spags has been killing it in Kansas City. But as a head coach, didn't really work out. What was it? New York and St. Louis. Yeah, back with the Rams, 2009, 2011. I think he just kind of figured out, like, this ain't really for me. Went on to be the defensive coordinator in New Orleans, worked in Baltimore, went back to the Giants, and then has been in Kansas City since 2019. And I don't know that he's ever going to get a head coaching call again, which seems a little crazy based off how well they've done this year. But I don't think I don't think anyone looks back at that 2016 matchup and goes, Spags should have been the guy over McVay. They're different jobs. And to go back again to I think the thing that we as fans and media need to remember if we want to be intelligent about this stuff. Want to just yell and have fun with it, then they're like, okay, But these interviews matter because they go into them. Josh Harris and everybody goes into them with a series of questions that really lay out, like, what's your vision going to be a head coach? Like, what's your staff going to look like? That's one of the most important questions. What's your staff going to look like? What is your kind of philosophy on drafting? Like, hey, this number 2 pick, what would you want to do with it? Do you have any thoughts? And if they're like, I want to take this guy, then Adam Peters is probably going to be like, all right, we're next. If he's like, I got to look at the prospects, or, I think it's really important that we heavily consider this thing because XYZ, like, they might have thoughts on that. They might have thoughts, obviously, on building a roster and, hey, how comfortable are you working with an analytics department? How much experience do you have? What kind of numbers and data would you want us to be gathering for you? If we hand you this data set, what do you make of it? What do you think about the current roster here in Washington? Like, all of these questions and so many more are on the table and are way more important in terms of how they answer them, because ultimately that's how they're going to act once they're in charge. All of that is way more important than who wins a game in the playoffs. Yes, McDonald over Slowick when it's Ravens versus Texans. But does that automatically mean that McDonald's the better head coaching candidate? No, it doesn't. So let's just collectively agree to stop doing that. They're important data points. And not saying anyone who's doing well right now is actually a bad candidate. I'm not saying anyone, I just think that we need to be smarter about trying to simplify everything down to one game or one playoffs. If the Ravens win the Super Bowl, it doesn't mean Mike Macdonald's the greatest head coaching candidate in the history of everything. Belichick has won 6 Super Bowls, and 0 of his assistants have ever sniffed a Super Bowl as a head coach. They're different jobs. And that is imperative to keep in mind. And I hope that if there are leaks, and it certainly seems like there are not a lot of leaks from the Washington side of things, that the leaks, and ultimately when we hear them on record in a press conference introducing the guy, the reasons why they hire the next head coach are not, did really well in the playoffs. It's, is a great leader that we're confident has a plan to help rebuild our football team to go where he just came from, which is the playoffs. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We are streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980 as we do each and every day. And, of course, if you miss any part of the show, you can check it out on demand in the Hoffman Show podcast feed. And coming up next, the latest on the Commanders coaching search, including an in-house interview with Eric Bieniemy this weekend, what we know, what we'd like to know, the positives, the negatives, all of it next here on the Team 980. Anthony, I just sent you something for Real Things that is a requirement today. There's a lot of great stuff that always comes through the weekend. But our boy Clinton Yates got to hang out with Snoop Dogg today.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, snap.
And there's some video from that. Yates, holler at your boy. Tell your mama I said what's up. Weekly guest of this radio show. Got to hang out with Snoop today. So you're going to hear that in Real Things Real People Said in real microphones. I'm just saying. That all good, Ant? We can get Instagram stories video?
Yes, sir.
Excellent.
Well, I can't get the video for you. I can get the audio. Oh, yeah.
That's what I mean. But I mean, like, there's a way for you on, I guess Instagram stories are on the laptop or like the desktop version of Instagram now.
Yes, sir.
So it's not like you got to try to do a fancy, crazy Bluetoothy audio edit or something. Anyway, that's coming up at the end of the show. You don't want to miss it. 10 minutes from now, we go around the NFL news style, get you caught up on all of the latest happenings, coach interviews, player signings, injury updates, playoffs, non-playoffs, et cetera, at 6:30. But, Anthony, I'll just cut to the chase, right? Eric Bieniemy interviewed with the Commanders over the weekend for their head coaching job. This was, I would say, a mild surprise to some people, but not a surprise to me, not in that, like, I had any kind of inside information, just that, like, it makes sense. Like, the guy was your offensive coordinator. He's very well thought of and respected. He's clearly a very good coach. He's extremely smart and thoughtful. He's detailed. He's prepared. I want to know what he thinks about this football team. I also have no interest in hiring him. And that's where I just get straight to the point. Eric Bieniemy is a good coach who had a horrendous year. And I just don't know how there's any other version of what happened in 2023 with the Commanders' offense. There is no justifying the game plan they went into. There's no possible way you could say passing the ball with the frequency that they did, leveraging Sam Howell, a second-year starter who had 19 career passes coming into the season, was a good idea. And ultimately, I think that we need to go back to remembering why EB came here in the first place. EB came here to prove that he could succeed without Andy Reid. What on earth makes you think that the 24th ranked offense and whether you want to go by numbers, bottom third in scoring and total offense, whether you want to go by film and you see the sloppiness, you want to go by the play calling and you see the pass run distribution, and you marry that with the quarterback and what would seem like a smart way to operate. Like, no matter how you cut it, he came here to prove that he could do it without Andy Reid as a babysitter, if you will. I think that's pejorative. But, like, to do it without working for Andy Reid. And if you're basing it off of this season's worth of evidence, the answer was no. Like, I like EB. And I think that he will probably go somewhere and hopefully learn from this season and be better next year. But there ain't no way you can look at the data and the evidence and come away with anything other than that conclusion. Now, it's not that simple in that those are the only factors, right? Like, yes, I will hear you that the setup here was not great. The personnel, I don't know that he got his position coaches in place, that he wanted because of some of the financial stuff and the ownership change. Obviously, the quarterback situation was less than ideal. Like, I'm not pretending that stuff doesn't exist. But ultimately, like, if you're on Iron Chef, Anthony, you know Iron Chef?
I know the Iron Sheik.
It's a different. It's a different thing. Oh. Iron Chef is a show, or Chopped. Like, a lot of them are similar. Beat Bobby Flay. You get given an ingredient and you're told to make a meal, and you're judged on that meal. And if your ingredient is not one that's your favorite, you don't get to be like, but I Mr. Chairman, That's an Iron Chef reference. I don't like that ingredient. It's not what I would have picked. And it's like, sorry, not really the challenge here. Now, I do think if we're going to extend this Iron Chef metaphor and perhaps torture it a little bit, the response might be, well, that ain't my restaurant. I'm not in Kitchen Stadium. Let me run my own restaurant, pick my own ingredients, and I'll cook you a better meal. And that would be my argument if I was Eric Bieniemy. If it's like, hey, well, this didn't go well, how do you explain it? It's like, I would have never done that. Ron wanted to, or we got stuck because of the ownership situation and the timeline. Like, that's the argument I would make if I was EB, and I don't know that that's totally without merit. But here would be my simple thing. You're the Commanders, and you got options, right? You're now a team that's the belle of the ball in a lot of ways. You have already gotten the best general manager on the market, and while there are other jobs that might be more appealing to certain candidates amongst the young, up-and-coming, first-time head coaches that want to build something, you're going to have your pick of coaches, most likely. Your Ben Johnsons, your Mike McDonalds, your Bobby Slowicks, even to an extent, Raheem Morris. Late 40s. He was a head coach, but probably shouldn't have been. He's in many ways going to be a first-time head coach with some of the benefits of having done it already and learned some lessons. But like of those candidates, the non-Belichick, non-Harbaugh, if we just want to be more direct and less wishy-washy about it, you could have someone who's had 2 tremendous years as an offensive coordinator without Patrick Mahomes, with Jared Goff as his quarterback, someone who is universally looked at as one of the best schemers in the league, someone who his players to a T love the guy. He's seen as a super dynamic personality, got great leadership, great organizational skills, all of it. Or you could have a guy whose only success as an offensive coordinator came under Andy Reid with Patrick Mahomes. He got here and immediately rubbed people the wrong way. There was a lot of consternation, not just amongst players, but amongst staff. And even if he was right, like, it wasn't, like, the way that he interacted with people wasn't good. So that limits the type of person you can bring into your organization because they better get along with him. Otherwise, you're going to have problems. Why would you just not go with the better option that has a better chance of success? Of those 2 resumes, it's pretty easy to pick the first guy. So why wouldn't you take Ben Johnson or McDonald or whatever versus Bieniemy, who's always kind of had this, he's really good, but he's going to agitate you. Do you want the guy that's the agitator running the organization? And again, I'm not saying Bieniemy's a terrible candidate. There's so much to like here. But if I'm Carolina and I don't have the option of picking someone who's seen as better, then yeah, I have to settle for Eric Bieniemy, in air quotes. Like, I'm probably getting a pretty good coach. But there's some stuff that I'm going to have to work through and some personality stuff. And also, specifically if I'm Carolina, if I look at what he just did with Sam Howell, I don't want that dude anywhere near Bryce Young. He's going to get him killed. So it just comes down to this. Bieniemy, good coach, revered is a high-quality human being, but the resume's spotty. And maybe he interviewed incredibly well. I do think it is a bit of a joke that Josina Anderson reported that his interview was very detailed and it was very, that so clearly came from Bieniemy's side of things because the Commander's side isn't leaking jack. So don't think that because one reporter got complimentary things about the interview that she's wrong necessarily, but that it came from the team side of it saying like, oh yeah, so impressive. Can't wait to run and tell Josina Anderson about it. No, that came from Eric's side of things. Obviously. I mean, look, I guess I shouldn't say that. I'd be mad if I was a reporter and someone wanted to speculate on my sources. But as someone who's been a reporter and understands how this works and also is listening to the other reporters like John Keim, who's like, they're not saying anything on the Washington side of it. Everything that you hear is from other places. Put 2 and 2 together. The question is, why would you go for something that has all the things you like, has the good scheme, has the detail, has the motivation, all the things that EB has, when you have something over here that has that and more. That ultimately is what it comes down to. The Commanders have options, and I think that there are options that are better than Eric Bieniemy. A year ago, when I was singing Bieniemy's praises as loudly as anyone, I wanted it to work. It didn't, and ultimately it comes down to he came here to prove that he could do the OC job without Andy Reid, and he did a bad job in 2023. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. When we get back, we will go around the NFL and hit all of the biggest news stories, including EB's former boss interviewing for a defensive coordinator job in the NFC East. Yes, that's right. If you haven't heard, Ron Rivera could be back in the NFC East next year. Fill you in on the details next. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app and streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. All right, let's fire up the old NFL music again and go around the league, as there's a ton of stuff to catch up on. So we'll do that for you now before we head out of here at 7 o'clock. The first story, Anthony, is one that I'm surprised about the where. I'm not actually that surprised about the what. But Ron Rivera interviewed with Nick Sirianni to be the defensive coordinator of the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, who knows how serious that is in terms of their top candidates. But I do think people, like there is a snarky part of me. And I think a louder, very fan, more than snarky, just dismissive voice point of view that says, please do this. Please, Philadelphia. Ron sucks. That guy's the worst. Let's get him signed up so that we can beat you next year. And in an effort to be fair, I think a couple of things need to be said. One, the last time Ron Rivera was a defensive coordinator, he coordinated the best defense in the NFL. 2010 Chargers, they were the number one defense in the league. That got him the Carolina job. He was the head coach ever since. That said, Ron last coordinated defense outside of the last 5 weeks of the season in 2010, and that was a hella long time ago. With that said, Ron did a better job than people realize in the final 5 weeks. I know they didn't win, but it went from disaster to not disaster. And to do that in the middle of a season, while, by the way, not really calling your own scheme, he was calling and coaching jacks because they couldn't change the entire defense, is actually pretty impressive. And I think the biggest thing that I would just say, and before people immediately dismiss this, or Rivera's ability to be a DC, even if it's not in Philadelphia, is like everyone that I know that got to really talk ball with Ron came away surprised and impressed with how smart he was about football. I just think, like, when you look at his tenure here, he never applied those skills. Like, him as a manager is a disaster. Like, that's the irony of his, like, oh, I didn't get to coach the last 5 weeks thing. It's like, I was just a manager. Yeah, and you stunk at it. Like, you took on this head coach, CEO type of head coach model, coach-centric nonsense, where you, even if you were doing more managing than you even thought because Dan's whole ownership thing was a disaster and you had the COVID stuff and, like, there's all this managing that had to happen. You're bad at it. He's just a bad manager. Like, he doesn't understand how to set a vision, to execute it, to what's important, what's not. But as a football coach, he's apparently a lot better at that. Like, he's someone whose career probably should have capped out to be maximized. Like, he's more Steve Spagnuolo. If he turns it into a guy who's a coordinator for the rest of his career and is good at it. Like, Spags, great coordinator, multiple Super Bowls, multiple places. Like, head coach, wasn't it? Had a short run. Maybe he'd be better the second time around. But for Rivera, like, he lived on the fact that they were building to something with Cam Newton in Carolina up to 2015. 2015, they have this masterful year. They go 15-1. Cam's awesome. They win the MVP. They then get whacked in the Super Bowl by Peyton Manning in Denver. And then the hope was to be able to recapture the magic, and he probably gets a couple extra years there that he shouldn't have because they're living on that Super Bowl glory and, they're just waiting. Oh, it's like if Cam could get back from injury, and every time he got close, he'd get hurt again. And so ultimately, he winds up being there for like 9 years, has 3 winning seasons, comes here, doesn't have any. And it's like, oh, he's just not that good of a head coach. But him as a D coordinator, I'll put it this way. I'll wrap up with this thought. Don't be careful what you wish for on that one. I think it'd go better than a lot of people realize. There's also a chance it's an absolute disaster. There is that chance. But I don't think it's as guaranteed to be a disaster as a lot of snarky, burned Commanders fans. And trust me, I get it. But a lot of people, I think, in Washington are just like, yeah, hire him. And I don't know that that's as much of a home run to be a failure as people think it is.
I mean, could it be worse than this year's, Eagles unit?
I mean, it could be this year's Commanders unit, but I think that had a lot of personnel and a lot of Jack Del Rio and a lot of Brett Wieselmeyer to do with it.
Yeah, but also I think the Eagles, on paper anyway, their defense is more talented than what we have over in Washington. And I would say, like, down the stretch, like, the Commanders played better, but better is also very sort of kind of subjective because of where we were.
For sure. And I think the other thing, too, is, like, when you talk about specifically in Philadelphia, like, Ron was a lot more involved early on in Carolina. And part of the thing that he really liked here was the Allen Payne combo, right? Because he had Star Lotulelei and, who's the other guy? Was it not Chris Jenkins? That's the wrong era of Carolina Panthers football. Buckner? No, also wrong era. That's what happens when you grow up rooting for the team. I have too many players in my head.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you.
KK Short. That's who it was. K1 Short. But they had Short and Lotulelei to build that defense around. And Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis, like, that's a pretty good interior duo to build around.
Yeah.
So, like, they've got some of the pieces that he likes. Josh Sweat is obviously Julius Peppers is one of a kind, but like that speed, athletic edge.
Hassan.
Hassan Reddick. Like, I mean, they've got dudes that in a Ron Rivera defense, not a Jack Del Rio defense, a Ron Rivera defense would be pretty nasty. Now they've got to figure out the back seven. Can they find their Luke Kuechly? Can they find, look, Bradbury, can he regain form like he had in Carolina and like he had a lot of years in Philly? There's a lot of questions there. But, I don't think it's a home run to be a failure. And I think a lot of Washington people, because of how bad it went here, understandably are going, go ahead, hire him. Please, do it.
But also, I feel like with the Chargers defense you was talking about from 2010, they had the Eric Weddles. They had Cromartie. They had some, like, pieces.
Dudes.
So I think, like, with talent, I think Ron would definitely be able to, like, get the most.
Howie Roseman's good at finding talent.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a risk because he hasn't done it in,
for sure. And the league
years.
has changed.
The league has definitely changed, more of a passing league. So it will be an interesting hire if he does.
I want someone to hire him because I want to see how it goes. My own personal intrigue. I want to see how it goes.
So if he goes out there, kills it, the Eagles are top 5, top 10 next year. During his tenure here, would it just be,
He never coached.
So I guess it would be on him.
Yeah, I mean, look, if I was the manager of this radio show and I didn't use my management skills to set up a way that I could also host it, I would not be maximizing our resources here. Because you've established you don't want to host a show. You're good producing it. So it'd be my job to set up a system where I host and you produce. I got to make sure you stay in your box and I'm able to do the things that I need to do to host it. So if he's a good coach, he should have done more coaching. Hire someone to do your administration.
Yeah.
Speaking of his former spot, Ron's not here, the one before that. The other NFL news and notes, Panthers promote ex-linebacker Dan Morgan to the GM position. He was the assistant general manager under Scott Fitterer. Morgan is a guy, I mean, I've known of Dan Morgan. He was kind of Kuechly before Kuechly. He wasn't as good as Kuechly, but like he was really, really good as like this genius middle linebacker, and then had to retire early and just never could quite stay healthy. And then the Panthers drafted Kuechly, and everybody forgot about Dan Morgan because we had Luke Kuechly. That was young Panthers fan Craig talking. I got information. I got gas. Can I get in? Whatever. But like that's kind of what happened. He got back in the organization, scouting, all that kind of stuff. And he's been involved in the interview process for the coaching stuff down there as well. And today they removed the interim tag from him. So that's the latest there. Chargers are meeting with Jim Harbaugh again. Also got a couple of other head coaching interviews around. Belichick's already interviewed twice in Atlanta. Harbaugh's still in the mix in Atlanta. Dan Quinn interviewing multiple places, including Washington this week, in-person interviews. And remember, the in-person interviews can happen now for anyone that's been eliminated, anybody that's still in. So Aaron Glenn, Ben Johnson, Mike McDonald, Anthony Weaver, etc. All of those guys must wait till the 29th. So I would imagine, Anthony, all of the Commanders' in-person coaching interviews that need to wait happen that bye week, and we probably get leaked who is going to be the head coach during the bye week between the championship games and the Super Bowl.
I was just trying to figure out, like, if the Lions and the Ravens were to go off to the Super Bowl, will we have to wait until after the Super Bowl? But you just answered my question.
For official, yes, I believe. Because remember last year, didn't the Cardinals get in trouble for kind of pre-announcing Steichen? Or not Steichen, Gannon? There was something that happened there where they broke some rule. But basically, like, yeah, we knew going into the game last year that Steichen was headed to the Colts and Gannon was headed to the Eagles.
Yeah.
Or headed to the Cardinals. So, like, it'd be one of those situations. Okay. Certainly would make the Super Bowl more interesting in Washington. Mm-hmm. Would probably make that week pretty interesting, too. Yeah. That I'm out there in Vegas. Am I going to have to go to some press conference? That would suck. I just want to go do my radio show with all the other radio shows on Radio Row and then go to events and stuff. And then eat in delicious restaurants because I'm in Las Vegas. Hopefully not lose money gambling. Last but not least, player news. Good news for San Francisco. No fracture in the shoulder for Deebo Samuel. He had that injury earlier this year, missed a couple of weeks. But they'd have a chance to have him play this weekend as there is no fracture in his left shoulder. Hopefully it's a sprain or something like that, but we'll see if he can go on Sunday. Meanwhile, on the other side, Lions had to sign a tight end because they lost their second-string tight end back up to Sam Laporta in the game on Sunday, and they got a pretty good one. Zach Ertz, former Eagles great, played pretty well the last couple of years with Arizona, although obviously not anywhere near what he was at his peak in Philadelphia. But his former tight ends coach from the Cardinals is now the tight ends coach in Detroit. So Zach Ertz is the signing as he was let go from the Cardinals in October, allowed to pursue other opportunities. Ultimately, it comes on championship weekend. He signs with the Lions. All right, that is the NFL news and notes, including some longer thoughts on Rivera interviewing in Philadelphia. When we get back, we wrap up the show with real things real people said into real microphones, including a meeting between one of the best friends of the show and Snoop Dogg. It's the Hoffman Show. We'll wrap it up here on the Team 980. Always live as well on the free Odyssey app. I'm looking up on the TV, Anthony, and I got the Jason Kelce jumping out of the suite yesterday.
He's crazy.
He's the best.
He's crazy.
My favorite was when they did the cutaway shot to Taylor Swift and Brittany Mahomes, and it's just Jason's nipple in the background.
Did you see what his daughter said?
Yeah. Text it for those that didn't see it. I guess Donna, Mama Kelce, was with or someone. Maybe it was Kylie, his wife's mom, because I thought I saw Donna in the suite. Mama Kelce is typically always at the game, so maybe it was Mama-in-law Kelce. Had the girls at home. Kylie and Jason went to the game, and they texted Kylie and said, "Dada's boobs are out."
Yep.
That is true.
They were out.
Kelce child, Dada's boobs were out. So was his belly.
Yep.
And his propensity for drinking beer. I think it was Chris Long, his former teammate, obviously NFL great in his own right, tweet out, people think that this is because Jason's retiring. No, this is just Kels on a Tuesday.
Dang.
He can crush some beers.
Hey, more power to him. I can't do it.
No.
That isn't my thing.
No. Not like that.
I mean, in general.
But especially not like that.
Yeah, definitely not like that.
I love that he also just, like, it wasn't a bit for 5 seconds. He just sat in the suite. He's in a luxury suite with the most famous human being possibly in the entire world.
Yeah.
And he's just shirts off. I'm Jason Kelce, and I don't care.
Jumping out suites.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I'm sure security was thrilled, by the way.
I mean, they looked fine. They were content. It looked like, Yeah.
Whatever. So that I feel like if we did a Real Things video version, I don't even know what the sound would be, but like that's the spirit of Real Things.
Oh, yeah,
I wish Kevin Harlan had a radio call of that. That would be in the Real Things Hall of Fame.
Who do we have? Yes, Collinsworth.
That was the CBS game. So that was Romo and Nance, who everyone hated online. I do think that crew started really strong. Like Romo revived Nance's career because Nance had died inside working with Phil Simms all those years.
Yeah.
And then it's just the farther Tony's gotten from the game, the less good it's been.
You like Greg?
Olsen's awesome.
Yeah. Hey, I think he likes talking too.
I mean, I feel like he has an enthusiasm for like explaining the game too.
Oh, that's probably what it is then.
To fans. I don't think he's like, I love to hear my own voice. He's like, look at this awesome thing that just happened. Like, that's what I want in an analyst. Yeah. All right. Time to wrap up, though, as promised, with an epic Real Things Real People Said into real microphones.
Real things.
We're not going to be sucked this year.
Real people.
5-11. Not very good.
Said into real microphones.
You know, the culture is actually damn good.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, best friend of the show, one Clinton Yates. Clinton Yates, he of Around the Horn fame, he of Washington, D.C.'s own, ran into / did something at work with Snoop Dogg today. Yep, Snoop Dogg. That one. And Snoop was a big fan, apparently, of Clinton's on Around the Horn, which set up this exchange.
All right, your boy Clinton Yates from ESPN, obviously here with Snoop Dogg for his new movie Underdogs coming out. I understand you want to be on TV.
I want to be on Around the Horn, man. I'm tired of y'all playing games with me. Put me in the box, man. I got information. I got game. Can I get in where I fit in? I get points. I had like 30 points. Get me in, man. Cut me in and cut it out.
Reality, he's talking to you.
Let's go.
Let's figure it out.
Now, Anthony, do you know how a new panelist finds out that they are on Around the Horn?
Do they get an email?
No, they get a text from Reality.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so like you just get a text and you might have Tony's number, you might not, and it just goes like, it's time. And Tony, he's posts these on Twitter. They're great. And then he like gives them all the information, whatever. Can you imagine him just texting Snoop Dogg, it's time? Snoop's like, who is this?
That would be crazy.
Tony Reality. All right, we'll see you tomorrow on The Hoffman Show. Terps Talk is next.